war footing with Iran. So what's really going on? Let's run out to the WRVA Newsmaker Hotline. Joining us right now from the Heritage Foundation, a Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army retired, James Carafano, joining us right now on News Radio WRVA. Good morning, sir.
Hey, great to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So I guess, are we in limbo? Are we back on a war footing? Are we leaning back towards a ceasefire? Where do you see us right now in regards to Iran?
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, I literally don't care. It's not really the big issue. I mean, Iran today physically cannot build a nuclear weapon even if they wanted to. They can't threaten any of their neighbors with barrages of missiles and drones. They could maybe fire a few, but they can't threaten a Holocaust on anybody. They couldn't get any of their surrogates to attack anybody. And they cannot take 20% of the world's oil off the market. These are things that are physically impossible for the Iranians to do. That's a win for the U.S. because all those things are the things which made Iran a great destabilizer of the region. They cannot destabilize the region anymore. And so I don't know how this ends. And I will say most of the Iranian stuff that the Iranians are doing now is really for domestic consumption. You know, they want to keep an iron fist on the country. And so they say, well, look, we're being tough. You know, we're attacking the Americans. They don't tell you that they fired a handful of things that got shot down. We are closing the straits, even though oil's moving through the straits every day. So it may play well at home to people who don't have access to the internet and don't know what's going on in the world. But honestly, I don't know how this ends because you have a regime that on one hand is just interested in staying in power and is willing to take an enormous amount of punishment. You have an administration which basically can do anything they want. And the Iranians have no capacity really to prevent the United States from achieving its goals. The important things are not what's going on in Iran, but the other things the U.S. can do in the region now that we couldn't do before. Reconstruction in Gaza and Lebanon and Syria, getting the countries to work with Israel to develop their own defense capabilities against a future Iran threat. Working with other people in South Caucasus and Central Asia, in the Middle East to create more resilient and redundant supply chains so things can move through the region regardless of what the Iranians do. Taking things that the Iranians a year ago could have stopped us, and now they can't. So those are the really, really important things. But not to pick on you guys, but everybody's saying, well, what's going to happen in the war? And the answer is it really doesn't matter all that much.
See, I'll push back a little bit because I think for our listeners and for me, I think people want to know what's going on and what direction the country's going on. So I understand what you're saying. Iran has been severely hamstrung from where they were when they can unleash all of their proxies on Israel and their neighbors, and everybody was afraid of them, and they were the big bullies in the neighborhood. They just got punched in the nose. They still act like the bully right now. I know Americans are concerned about the price of gasoline in the Strait of Hormuz and oil, and we've heard all of that. But with all that being said, I guess what's confusing to our listeners, and we had a whole discussion on this yesterday, is what is the United States' intention? What do we need to do? There's some that say, hey, War Powers Act, pull back. We've gone too far. Others are saying, bomb them into submission, bomb them into the Stone Age. Others are saying, can we really go in there and defeat them, get the nuclear materials, open up the Strait of Hormuz without having U.S. Marines, boots on the ground, somewhere in Karg Island or even on the mainland of Iran? How would you respond?
Yeah, well, none of those options are going to happen. Look, we're likely not going to. I know a lot of people say nothing short of regime change will solve this, but regime change brings a whole nother set of problems.
And I don't think I'm sorry, that wasn't. I don't remember the administration ever talking about regime change.
I think because it's a bad option. But many of the critics who say, well, we haven't gone far enough. The problem is a regime change brings bad, and the other problem is nobody can tell you what's the check for that. You know, what amount of force do you do that gets to regime change? So nobody's going to write a blank check. The U.S. is going to do that. We're also not going to be utterly stupid to just walk away. Because why would you give the Iranians a get out of jail free card? So we're going to operate in this area in the middle and mow the grass. And the president may decide to do more, or he may decide to do less. But the Iranians are crippled, and you don't get the result that you want. You get the important result is what protects U.S. interests. U.S. interests are protected. That's what the American people know, and they're protected at a very responsible course. I mean, look, every death of an American serviceman is completely tragic and horrible, but we've had virtually no casualties. We have had casualties, but very, very, very few for an operation of this size and of this scale. So I know people, want fidelity. We're programmed for that. The Netflix miniseries ends, a baseball game ends. Reality doesn't end; it just keeps going on. And so, if your choice is between are interests protected or do I have a finality that lets me, write the last, then, I'm sorry, you're not going to get that because our president is being realistic and pragmatic, and he's not going to do things. He's going to do things to protect our interests at the most responsible course. He's not going to do things to make people feel like, the president's doing exactly what I want. That's just the reality of how diplomacy and the use of force works.
What about the Strait of Hormuz? We've talked to admirals from the USMS and kind of explained how the Strait of Hormuz, it is technically not international water, but it is an international thoroughfare. They seem to think that they control the Strait of Hormuz. I think in the short term, that's the most important thing, to have the Strait of Hormuz open, because 20% of the world's oil supply, energy supply, fertilizer comes through there. And having them with their hands on that choke point is not going to be good for the United States nor the rest of the world.
Yeah, well, first of all, that's not true. It was true a year ago, but it's not true today. There's oil and fertilizer and other things that are flowing out of the Gulf through routes other than the Strait of Hormuz today. So the number 20% hasn't been 20% for several months.
Is it significant?
So the percentage is much less than that, and there is shipping going in and out of the straits through routes other than the Iranian chosen route. What they have is a limited capacity to interdict some routes on the strait. That's true, but it is limited. It's certainly not taking 20% of the world's oil off the market. And by the way, the market has so shifted since then that 20% isn't 20% anymore, just because so much production and stuff is coming from other places.
Right. The U.S. has increased production. We have Venezuelan oil that's now not embargoed going back in there. But is it still significant? I guess is the question that I have.
No. I mean, in a global scale, no, we're never going back to, $6 gas prices. That's just never going to happen. And the Iranian capacity to do the limited interdiction they're doing is declining over time. I mean, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has said, look, we're actually going in every day with Apache helicopters and A-10s, and we're stripping away even the limited capacity that they have to interdict with stuff. So shooting up boats, shooting up launchers, shooting up radar sites. I mean, the mere fact that essentially the Iranians don't have any electronic means to monitor the strait, right? They don't have radars. And then when you turn off GPS, they can only essentially attack what they can physically see. That in itself is significantly reduces the threat of passing through there. So, we're talking about the Straits of Hormuz like it was a year ago, and it's not a year ago.
Okay. Big question for me then is, we don't know what's going to go on. And that's what that's what frightens me a little bit, because I don't want mission creep. You have people that are throwing out there, we want regime change. That was never the mission. The mission was Iran cannot have a nuke. Then Iran decided they wanted to try to squeeze off the global energy supply in their hemisphere, or their part of the world. Like you said, that's been diminished with production going up and alternative routes being found to avoid having to deal with them. But if we continue to kind of go in the manner that we do, how do we make sure that you don't have people on this side or that side, and we don't lose sight of, we cannot allow them to have a nuke? The world will not be a safe place if Tehran can put their finger on the button. Right.
Well, first of all, Iran can physically not build a nuclear weapon. They physically cannot do that. And they may still have, it's called highly enriched uranium, which is the guts of what you need to make a nuclear weapon. But that mass supply is literally buried and out of reach, and they can't dig it out without us knowing about it.
After Midnight Hammer.
Right.
For now?
And after, the additional strikes we've
Okay.
done. So, and the U.S. can go back and cut that off anytime they want it, because they just don't have an air and missile defense system that's capable of defending anything. So the answer to your question is really simple. The reason why you never have to fear mission creep is that the President of the United States, who's the commander-in-chief of U.S. forces and the leader of the free world, and will decide the actions of any coalition in this region, he does not do mission creep. And we have seen this again and again in Venezuela, in Afghanistan, where you have to remember, in Afghanistan, when Donald Trump was in Afghanistan, by the end of his office, we were spending less on Afghanistan in a year than the Obama administration was spending in a week. And in the last year of Donald Trump's term in office, this may not be exactly right, I don't think we had any casualties in Afghanistan. So he actually shrunk that mission to something that was much more realistic. So this is a guy that has a proven record of not doing mission creep. He's done the opposite in Ukraine. We've actually done, in terms of what we put in from the U.S. perspective, less for the Ukrainians, but he's actually gotten the Europeans to do more. And Ukraine has had the most success it's ever had on the battlefield in the 2 years that Donald Trump has been president, and we have not put one American troop in harm's way.
And actually has changed the battlefield scope for I think the next decade with the drones that they were able to develop.
Absolutely.
Mother is the necessity of invention, and I'll get that saying wrong off the top of my head, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. Sir, I appreciate you coming in. It's a different perspective. I think that you're looking at this with a bigger field of vision than a lot of us are here in the news, just looking at what's going on today, tomorrow, in the short term. I see your vision of this, and eventually, I think everybody has to agree they can't have a nuke. They can't build a nuke. They can't recover their program. If they do that, the entire world is in danger, not just Israel, but the entire world. I appreciate you coming back on. Love to have you come back on again. We have more time and finish this conversation.
All right, anytime. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, take care. James Carafano joining us from the Heritage Foundation. You want to comment? You can, 833-804-1140. We'll continue with you. It's News Radio WRVA. Hey, by the way, yesterday, just to tell you, I told you I saw some folks when I went over to Leicester by Adolph. You know where they're located, Ridge Shop.